Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Squad. I'm your host, Ronak.
And I'm Mandar.
In our last episode, we spoke about vision and the why behind leadership. Today, we are talking about something that determines whether vision becomes reality.
Accountability.
Mandar, in simple terms, what is accountability?
So, accountability is ownership of challenges where outcome may or may not be guaranteed. It is not just completion of tasks, it's the shift from, say, I did my part to did we really achieve that result?
Yeah, very interesting. And that difference is critical, Mandar, because teams rarely fail from the lack of talent, they fail from the lack of ownership.
Agreed. You can have a brilliant analyst in your team with a very clear understanding of the objective, but if he or she does not take accountability or ownership of the problem, it cannot be solved. As a matter of fact, it could create more problems.
Absolutely. In a complex environment such as business or maybe some projects that you're working on and even family life, if people say that's not my responsibility, it's just starts the problem. It progress stops, puts a gap in actually completing the task that you're wanting to complete.
Right. And accountability isn't about blame, it's about responsibility without any excuses. An accountable person seeks clarity, he understands the situation, and he owns the outcome.
And as leaders, we must demonstrate accountability ourselves before expecting it from others. That's the hard truth. The leader should be ready to pull up their own sleeves and do the work, the grunt work themselves. They should feel empathy towards what they are asking their team members to do. So, in times of crisis, when the leader actually rolls up their sleeves, like I said, and tries to help the team and push the team forward, that shows accountability and it takes the team forward one step at a time.
Right. Yeah. If a leader blames the market, the economy, or any external forces, or even his own team, sometime when things go wrong, the culture takes a hit. Accountability or ownership becomes very rare.
That's a great point, Mandar. Going a little bit off script, Mandar, a question for you. Was there a situation where you faced where you had to, show some ownership so that the team felt that they are moving in the right direction?
Yeah, there is one from last year when we had our president in US announce the tariffs, and this became a big problem because something that was costing $100 today was costing $250, which was obviously for a business was a big problem. Instead of blaming the system or the decisions taken, knowing that this is what we have to solve for, when me and some parts of my team, including procurement team and supply chain teams, we came together and we decided to solve the issue and take the ownership of the issue. We were able to work out a solution that actually not only avoided us the tariff impact, but also executed the project earlier than we thought. Obviously, this required a lot of coordination, a lot of effort between teams. But I think the important aspect related to this conversation is what we did not do is not blame on the decisions taken by federal, because that's not something we can control. All
Correct.
we could do is try to solve for the constraints that are given to us, and we got the solution. Everybody understood, our off takers that we were working with, they also understood that this is the reality that everybody is living with, so they were also receptive of what we were doing. They liked the fact that we are taking initiative, and they respected that. So what I'm also trying to show here is that when you take accountability, not only your team looks at it, but even the external counterparties that you're working, they also respond to it. This is where after sales or any operational supports for your customers make a massive impact, because they see that you are taking accountability of the problem and trying to solve it.
Yeah, very well said, Mandar. I have had also some experiences with accountability and as a leader to show that in not only my corporate world, but when I was playing, when I was in India, like some of the situations while in the game, when shoulders are drooping and the opponent team is winning, uh, is the body language, the accountability, the ownership of taking responsibility of the situation changes the dynamic of the game, changes the positivity within the team. So I've done that several times, and I try to do that in corporate world as well. So very well said there. But coming back to the point we are trying to make, when the leader says to the team that, hey, we are accountable together. If you fail, I'll handle it. I will be the face of it. But if you win, we will all win together. that completely shifts the tone and momentum of the team and helps them realize that, hey, I have an accountable leader within my team and I should myself be accountable or owning the problem that we are facing.
Yeah, no, that's a great statement. I think it changes the whole environment of the team. People understand that there is somebody who will stand by when it's needed, and it certainly flows from the top, where a leader creates an example for his team to set things right. And this also helps in building trust because the team thinks about relying on their leader when they can fail. So they get innovative, try out different solutions. So certainly helps the team, certainly helps the company also in the long run.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe now we can shift our focus to how leaders would build accountability, right? Let's make this practical. Mandar, do you have some suggestions that you could tell the listeners here?
Sure. Yeah. There are four levels that leaders can look at when they are trying to represent accountability and set up an example. The first is clarify expectations. Now, this comes from our last episode of Vision, where you have an overarching idea, and then you break that into multiple clear goals, and that as much as you can make it clearer to your team, and everybody sort of signs off on it. That's number one. Second is you connect work to purpose. There are values, principles everybody has, everybody carries. They need to feel that they are shared with the achievement that they are looking at. And everybody comes to work with their own sets of reasons, which are behavioral, or they connect with their values somehow. We need to make sure that that's also aligned. The leader needs to make sure that everybody sort of feels that their ideas are respected, and that's also something we covered in our vision episode. Now, the third thing is you give authority to the team along with the responsibility. This goes back to the statement you said. When you are giving somebody the power and the responsibility together, they will engage. But if someone does not get power to execute something and they are always relying on you to make decisions, they will start slowly disengaging from the problem because they feel that every decision needs to be taken by the leader. So they feel like they don't have that much say. And then there is psychological safety. If mistakes are punished harshly, people will never share the problems, and they'll try to cover it up as much as possible, which will actually create bigger set of problems. But when you make people feel comfortable in sharing, and this goes back to the trust part we mentioned earlier, that they feel trusted when they are sharing with the leader. They feel that they are not vulnerable, they can be as open as possible, and it will be respected. So that's these are the four pillars for building accountability. And a leader, people who are listening to this podcast can try it out and see how they grow on accountability with their team.
No, those are really good points, Mandar. The first 2 points, like you mentioned, we almost talked about them on the first 2 episodes of this podcast. I wanted to give the listeners an example of the remaining three and point four about giving authority with responsibility and creating psychological safety. Many of my teams that I have led, I will always try to find some up to mentor someone to be the future leaders, right? And then help give them authority with responsibilities, the point you're trying to make there. One example I can remember is one of the person I was trying to help grow as a leader. That person was always hesitant to take decisions. So even if I was empowering them with taking decisions, they were hesitant. So I had to create that psychological safety, which is your fourth point, is don't be afraid of making a mistake. Right? Like, I'm here, I will face the situation if there's a mistake, but you have to take a decision at some point. The key was to help them understand that, hey, I'm here if you make a mistake, and we will correct and address the mistakes, and we'll make sure we don't make that mistake again. So we could help the individual grow to take more ownership as they move forward. So really good points, Mandar. I really appreciate you sharing that with the listeners here. And now then, shifting this a little bit, because I keep thinking about this. Accountability is great, but sometimes leaders cross the line between accountability and micromanagement, right? How do we as leaders not cross that line?
Yeah, no, that's a big practical issue. Sometimes leaders get way too involved into a problem, and that also restricts their own team members to take decisions. And the leader might feel that they are giving power to their peers, but But in reality, when they start micromanaging every step of the process, they start taking away that power in sort of unknown and unseen way. And in during micromanagement, the key differentiator between micromanagement and accountability, if someone wants to do a litmus test, is if you are controlling every step of the process, you know that you are micromanaging. But if you are only covering the outcome, and even your conversations with your team on one-on-ones or in group are mostly pointing towards outcome, they are not telling you how to get there, they're only telling you what and why. And that's the job of leader, which is something we covered in our first episode also. But the how is something that the team needs to be able to figure out and resolve. That's the only way they will learn and the team will grow.
Yeah, and that will help them own the result. And the job of the leader is to make sure that they remove the hurdles that that their team feels that they will have if they want to be successful in this task, right? We should and trust them to do the job, and tell them that hey, we are available if there are any questions or concerns, and also create that environment where asking a question is not really looked upon as something that is weird. Asking a question is normal, and having an open door thought process for the leader always helps differentiate between micromanagement and accountability. This is a really good discussion about accountability and how we can implement that as leaders. So this is in corporate leadership. We are giving examples in corporate leadership, but Mandar, can we shift our focus on personal accountability as well?
Absolutely, Ronald. And in leadership or even taking accountability, we see this in our daily life. It's a very personal aspect that a person needs to sort of learn through iterations. And very often we tend to blame the lack of time or lack of resources around us or impacts of other people's effort on us. But in reality, if you look at the situation and when a person sits down and really understands, everybody comes to pretty much the same conclusion that it's always us. We can always take care of few things in advance or we can plan things accordingly. And that's where accountability starts to sort of sink in to the mind that, okay, next time when I do this, I need to be more prepared. I need to, when this is a process of development, this is process of gaining insights about ourselves. So it's a very personal journey. And yeah, it's you rightly said, it's beyond corporate. It's not only related to what you do in your office
Right.
environment. It's on daily life where you see this and you execute this.
Yeah, and for personal accountability, I think a powerful shift happens when we own what we are going to do, and in that ownership, we sometimes get overwhelmed, right? Like there is lot of things to do. How do I handle all of that? And I always remind myself that there are some things that are beyond my control and some things which are within my control. And for the things that are beyond my control, I don't spend an iota of energy and time because it's not going to be impactful on what the final result is going to be, which is within my control, right? So I will focus on the things which are within my control and try to have ownership and accountability on that.
Absolutely. That's precisely it. There are always some part of the action that is in our control and we can only focus on that. And even if it is our response to the conclusion, but it's still in our control. And that's something we have to keep working on and keep honing on as much as possible.
That's great, Mandar. So now we've talked about the importance of accountability, difference between accountability and micromanagement, and also how accountability is important in personal life. How do you know it's actually working within the team, and how do you know it's embedded in the culture?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, Ronak. And it's something that one needs to really observe as part of their group, as part of their team, and even in their own family, like we said in our personal lives. When you see there are certain signs, when you see these signs, you know things are moving in the right direction. So I'll give you four of them, and we can try to go more into it. But people will start giving you update before you ask them. They will start telling you things about the projects because they are excited about it and they feel that they can change things. They will start sharing things in advance. They will share, as part of this transparency, they will also start sharing risks, their own evaluation, which is absolutely important for every team member to grow upon because they need to have their own opinion and they need to start building on that opinion as the time goes so they mature. And when you talk to your team, you see the conversations are shifting from purely the set of problems to execute, but towards the solution. So people will not only tell you the problem, they will also discuss, okay, there is a problem, but these are two, three options we have. Which one do you think you should choose? So the conversation shifts from just sharing problems, but problems along with possible solutions. So that's one. And the language of the conversation shifts from they to we. When that's where you see people are taking responsibility and they feel they are part of the group, they feel they are working together. These are four signs that I'll certainly look for in terms of growing accountability in the team.
Yeah, absolutely, Mandar. And as leaders, we should demonstrate these qualities ourselves, right? We should provide the team updates before they are asking us for an update. We should identify risks going into the project, going into what we are working on. We should focus on, hey, we know this is a problem, but here is what we are going to do to provide a solution, and then shift our language, our body language, our actual email language, which sometimes is more communication over email to our teams, like shift it from, hey, we will do this, or we will be providing you a solution, or we will be working towards something. That small change from they to we, from I to we, is psychologically captured, and it shows the team how we can be accountable. So great points there.
Yep.
Mandar,
And good.
so go in terms of closing then, how do you think this accountability is important for leaders?
Yeah, as a simple analogy, I would say that if vision is your steering wheel, accountability is the fuel to move forward. It absolutely pushes you into towards your goal. It's a very important aspect. It's a behavioral as well as skill based aspect that people grow into, and leaders job is to make sure that they also respect a higher accountability within their team and make sure they are appreciated for what they have shown as a character.
Absolutely, Mandar. Without ownership or accountability, strategy from the leader just remains theory. It's on paper. We need to start help implementing it by being accountable ourselves and helping our team being more accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Leadership is about, we always talk about creating a culture.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular culture, people will take more responsibility and will not show any excuses. And they know how to collaborate. They understand that collaboration is key in order to get to goals. And that comes from the overall ownership of the process.
Absolutely. As we close on this, listeners, I would ask you to reflect on two things. Where in your life are you fully accountable and where you are still negotiating responsibility?
If this episode added value, share it with someone building a team or building themselves.
Until next time,
Keep leading with clarity.
and take ownership of the outcome. Thank you for listening.